Hey there guys, Botstobo here. Today what I got for you is an actual review on the M40A1 gas mask. How about we jump into the review, starting with some general notes. First off, none of the M40 series masks are still being produced, so if you buy one, it will be surplus. I know a fair few people have reservations buying surplus masks, but if you're doing the proper preventative maintenance checks and services, it won't be a problem. Even if you've got a brand new production mask, like one that's straight from the factory, you should already be regularly checking out every component on the mask. So it's no different with a surplus mask. Second, this mask was designed and made back when the United States military wanted masks that could be repaired when broken instead of just thrown away and replaced with a new mask. Because of that, most parts on this mask are replaceable. So if you've got the spare parts and the right tools, you can fix almost anything with it. Third, I should note that this mask does not really interfere with the aiming of rifles or the use of optical sights, which is quite nice. And finally, and what I would consider this thing's biggest downside, is the weight. It is a very heavy mask. In fact, I believe it is the heaviest previous gen mask. So compared to stuff like FM12s, S10s, OM90s, Forsheda A4s and F2s, this is going to be a bit heavier. And it's a whole lot heavier than something like an M50. This issue gets worse when you add a filter and a voice projection unit, like this M7 voice projection unit, I believe weighs 1.5 pounds, which doesn't sound like much, but you're gonna fucking notice that 1.5 pounds when you're actually wearing it on your face. With that out of the way, why don't we start looking at the individual components of this thing? Why don't we start with the lenses, which are these two quite large lenses that provide really good vision. Peripheral vision isn't great, but otherwise it's really spectacular. Because it is a dual lens design, you will have some ghosting in the middle of your vision, but that's not too big of an issue. It does support its own type of outsert, which are proprietary. They come in tinted and clear and also laser protective, like you see the HECU and Half-Life 1 wearing. The outserts fit over the lens using this rubber skirt, which I quite like, because there's no way in hell this thing is coming off without you taking it off. The lenses are made out of, I think that's a polycarbonate material, and are crimped with a metal frame there to the facepiece, so they can be changed out if you need to. I should mention, though, that the metal components that are all over this thing do add to the weight problem significantly. In fact, I think that is one of the main reasons it's there. I know I usually talk about the facepiece material during the general notes section at the start, but I figured I would actually wait to show it to you specifically because it is important. You see, the M40 uses what's called a second skin, which means under here is the actual silicone facepiece, and outside is a butyl second skin that increases the chemical resistance of the mask. The second skin is completely removable if you want to do that, but I personally quite like them. While it's true that, they insulate the mask more, that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending where you are. Specifically if it's colder, well, you maybe want it a bit more insulated, or if it's hot, that's gonna fucking suck. They also, though, give you the comfort of silicone, but with the chemical defensive capabilities of butyl. Down here on the chin of the mask, you have both a mask beard and a hood stop, so the chin of your hood is going to be very secure. Moving on from this, here is the inlet and port. I am missing the actual inlet valve for mine. I bought it like that, so whenever I want to use this thing, I just take the one off of my M45 and put it in there, because it is compatible. You can also use an MCU's inlet valve on that. They're cross-compatible, but if you buy one, you're not going to have that problem. And it is, of course, 40mm NATO, so it will be compatible with almost any filter you find out there. On the other side of the facepiece, you've got your other port. It's, of course, also 40mm, and it's got a blanking plug with a secondary voice emitter there, so that makes using a telephone way easier. You can easily unscrew the blanking plug by using one of the D-rings on the carrier's straps, which is a neat little feature. Down here, you can see the exhale valve cover, which does a very good job at protecting the exhale valve. This is also where your external drinking tube is located. As you can see, it just pulls out of this little rubber sheath. It's a lot easier when you're not holding phone. And it also has this little hook that keeps it in place. And that is a Type M adapter, so it's compatible with pretty much any old American canteen, as well as Camelbacks, as long as you have one of their Chembio reservoirs and a Type M adapter for it as well. If you actually peel off the exhale valve guard, you can see the de-icing spikes, so those are just malleable rubber spikes for clearing frost off of your valve. This valve is sturdy and just very reliable, and that's pretty much it. Moving up to the front of the mask, you can see this voice projection unit. This is an ESP2. It is also compatible with an M7 or a series of other voice projection units that all have the same kind of clip system and the foam pad. So you can use plenty of different voice projection units on this. The voice projection unit does not have an internal mask microphone. It instead has a microphone built into it. So the VPU does take audio from the primary voice emitter, which is pretty decent, but when you use it with a voice projection unit, you can hear the plastic in there vibrating around. But before we move on from up here, I should mention that with the M42 kits, you can get a microphone that actually clips on there so that you can use comms with this mask. However, you cannot use comms and a voice projection unit at the same time, which I think is very unfortunate. Next up, let's talk about this head harness. The stock one is pretty decent despite not being a skull cap. It is, of course, a 6-point head harness, which does a very good job at distributing the weight pretty equally. And it does have a little donning loop, so you can don this thing pretty damn fast. But if you want a different head harness, it's really no problem because this is a 6-point head harness, so you can switch it out with pretty much any other mask on the market's harness. And since that was pretty much everything I wanted to show you on the exterior, I'll move on to the interior. Starting with the peripheral seal, it is just a pretty standard, just inverted piece of rubber, which works great. The chin cup also works great. It really cups your chin well, it doesn't slip out, and it's got this little moisture drain there. I forgot to mention earlier that since the exhale valve is located on the bottom there, it can drain moisture passively, which is a really nice feature. Also the oronasal cup, which is, while it is very much a previous gen nose cup, so it's gonna really clamp the top of your nose. It's a lot more comfortable than other ones, and also it has a lot of wiggle room built into it, so unless you got the wrong size mask, you will fit this nose cup. You can also see in there your mouthpiece for your drinking tube. The ribs on there can be easily grabbed with the teeth, and if you want to adjust it to make it shorter, you can actually cut those off. That's actually what you're supposed to do. Note that there is no lever or anything that allows you to control the position. You're just supposed to apply pressure to the exhale valve to kind of guide it into your mouth. Then you can see the rear of the primary voice emitter. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that this does use a pair of nose cup valves, which is quite nice. I like that a lot more than just having the Avon style hole in the center. Also, you have a Tissot system, so this thing doesn't really fog all that much. Well, really at all. Oh yes, and it can support glasses inserts, which I don't have a pair, unfortunately. So I guess we can move on to the conclusion. So do I think this mask is worth it? Yes. Yeah, I definitely would say that this is a good mask to grab, but I would personally rather take something like an M50, just because of the weight. But that's the short answer, so why don't we do the long answer now? As usual, I will touch on price first. It seems to me that the cost of a full M40 kit has stabilized at around $150, which, while being basically double what they were worth pre-COVID, it's as good as it's going to get for a while. So what you're getting for that price is a pretty solid mask design that's really only major drawback is that it's a bit heavy. It's got a lot of modern features and it's reliable. It's just a very well designed and made mask. Of course, as I said earlier, it's definitely not as good as like an M50 or a C50, but it is a previous generation mask. So if you're looking for a mask on kind of a mid-range budget, I would definitely recommend the M40. Mind you, it is also a lot cheaper than what Mira Safety sells, while still being way, way better. And with that, I will end the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one, whenever that is.